tried, of course, through sanctions to weaken him, but all that's actually done is drive him into the arms of China.
Whether that's conflict, whether it's extreme getting out of conflict, are progressive answers.
Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, is shifting the discourse in the lead-up to the UK polls, aiming for 10 Downing Street as he campaigns.
I think it goes both.
Farage's back-to-back salvos on the collective West pertaining to the Russia-Ukraine war has invited sharp criticism and also a strong endorsement on social media. Speaking in an interview with ITV, Farage reiterated his recent controversial views on the conflict in Ukraine, suggesting that Western actions had provoked Russian President Vladimir Putin into invading Ukraine. He criticized the expansion of NATO and the European Union, arguing that these moves gave Putin justification for his aggression.
Well, we've tried, of course, through sanctions to weaken him, but all that's actually done is drive him into the arms of China. He needs to know there's a threat. Now, he does need to know it so far and no further. I think the West, historically, up until a few years ago, provoked Putin stupidly. I felt the ever eastward expansion of NATO and the European Union was giving Putin a reason to go to war.
In the same interview, as a balancing act, Farage also voiced support for supplying military aid to Ukraine while acknowledging the war's stalemate and the tragic loss of life. Despite recognizing the slim prospects for success, he emphasized the need for peace negotiations.
I do support us giving munitions and help to Ukraine, but I feel the war is a complete stalemate. I think the number of lives being lost is horrific. There have been no sensible, substantive negotiations of any kind. And even if negotiations to try and find a peace, to try and find a way through failed, I think it's better to have those negotiations than not.
Labour leader Keir Starmer and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak have condemned Nigel Farage for his claim the West provoked the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Keir Starmer said, on the question of Farage, his comments were disgraceful. Anyone who is standing for Parliament ought to be really clear that Russia is the aggressor, Putin bears responsibility, and that we stand with Ukraine, as we have done from the beginning of this conflict, and Parliament has spoken with one voice on this since the beginning of the conflict. While Rishi Sunak, during an election campaign visit in London, said, what he said was completely wrong and only plays into Putin's hands. This is a man, Putin, who deployed nerve agent on the streets of Britain, who is doing deals with countries like North Korea. And this kind of appeasement is dangerous for Britain's security, the security of our allies that rely on us, and only emboldens Putin further. Farage's views also made headlines for his assertion that former US President Donald Trump took significant inspiration from his speeches in the European Parliament before launching his presidential bid. But Farage denied a prevalent opinion in UK that he is Britain's version of Trump, but acknowledges that they share many views.
I think he's learned quite a lot from me. I think it goes both ways, yeah.
What's he learnt from you?
Oh, I think he was watching my speeches in the European Parliament for many years.
Before joining Reform UK this month, Farage expressed his intention to support Trump's presidential campaign this year, emphasizing his close relationship and consistent praise for the former US president. Running for MP in Clacton could complicate his support for Trump's presidential bid. Despite his close relationship with Trump and his expressed intention to support Trump's current presidential campaign, Farage acknowledged that his new political commitments in the UK could complicate this involvement. If I'm elected the MP for Clacton and I'm there every Friday, it'll become more difficult, but not impossible, he noted. In addition to his foreign policy comments, Farage addressed domestic issues, particularly immigration. He voiced concerns about migrants in the UK not assimilating and continuing to speak their native languages, which he views as detrimental to community cohesion.
I have a huge problem with people coming to Britain, not assimilating, maintaining their own languages, not mixing in communities. That is a disaster. Once again,
Farage also criticised the Conservative Party for failing to deliver on Brexit promises. He highlighted the government's inability to reduce immigration numbers or simplify regulation, accusing them of prioritising cheap foreign labour over border control.
my point is this. There were two realistic expectations from Brexit. One, we control our borders and reduce the numbers coming in. They've exploded. They've trebled to numbers you can't even believe. Mm-hmm. And secondly, and that's because of a Conservative government that didn't even try, because their big backers want cheap foreign labour.
Stick with the economy for the moment.
And secondly, it was a realistic expectation. Indeed, when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, he was going to scrap 4,000 EU laws. He then binned that policy. So we've not seen the simplification of regulation.
Farage, a key figure in the Brexit campaign, aims to attract Conservative voters by advocating for policies like scrapping net zero commitments and reducing net migration to zero. Despite Reform UK's third-place position in polls, they are not expected to secure many seats in the upcoming general election, now less than 2 weeks away. Current polls suggest a close contest between the Conservatives and Reform UK for second place. Farage's outspoken views on Trump's inspiration from his speeches and his critique of NATO's role in Ukraine has ruffled a hornet's nest in the West as UK polls are just around the corner.